Polkadot. What is its deal? It doesn't seem to be moving nearly as much as the other layer ones, and yet it's still in the top 15. Can it stay there? That's a question only the community can answer. Today, I'm going to break down Polkadot, and at the end, I'm going to explain to you the one thing the DOT community must do if it's going to be successful. Let's get it.
I'm not a financial advisor.
Welcome to Ben Armstrong Crypto X. Don't just trade crypto, experience it. So all you have to do is hit that subscribe button to join Ben Nation. Today, we're going to be talking about Polkadot, a layer 1 smart contract blockchain with the ticker DOT. We're going to touch on my very specific problems with the founder of DOT, and at the end, I'm going to show you what the community needs to do, in my opinion. Polkadot currently has a market cap of over $9 billion and is number 12 on the global ranking of crypto assets. The all-time chart for Polkadot is looking pretty rough though. Even after hitting almost a 60% gain this year, DOT is still down 85%. And in most cases, I believe this could be a good thing when it's down, because it snaps back up. But I'm not so sure this is the case with DOT. So let's figure out why. Face value, the tokenomics look good for Polkadot because you don't see a lot of team or private investor allocations. But this can be deceiving. 11.6% of the supply is set aside for future sales, which is a large allocation just waiting to be sold by the team, just labeled differently. 30% is also set aside for the Web3 Foundation, which is managed by Polkadot. 50% of the tokens were distributed in the public auction, which was a mixture of retail and VC investors. Another interesting aspect for the tokenomics is that Polkadot has a very interesting inflation rate. It is not fixed because the rate changes depending on how much DOT is staked. Polkadot is one of the many smart contract platforms that grew out of Ethereum. The project's founder, Gavin Wood, which we'll talk a lot more about later, was actually one of the founding members of Ethereum. And he was the coder responsible for creating Solidity, the programming language that Ethereum uses now. This isn't really something to be proud of, though. Ethereum was one of the best ideas ever, but the execution ended up being terrible when it comes to the code. Gavin Wood is the main person that we have to blame for all of the technical issues it's had over the years. He hacked the code together in a few days, and as a CTO, he was in charge of making sure the code was ready for prime time, and it wasn't. Not long after launch, we had the DAO hack, which caused a hard fork and required an entirely new chain to replace the old one, and we are still left with the gas problems and development challenges, which probably could have been avoided if a bit more time was put into the code. Gavin Wood was also in charge of development for some of the very first Ethereum wallets with his company, Parity. There were two major issues with Parity in the span of 4 months. Between July and November of 2017, that resulted in a massive loss of customer funds. First incident happened in July, when Parity wallets were hacked because of a vulnerability in the code. The attacker stole about $30 million worth of ETH. Then, just a few months later in November, a user accidentally triggered a vulnerability in the Parity multi-sig wallets library contract, which led to the user becoming the owner of the library. Then they accidentally destroyed the contract, which froze all of the multi-sig wallets in the entire library, effectively locking up more than $150 million. There are no IOG and Gavin's no Charles Hoskinson, am I right? Funds were never recovered in either of these cases. Mistakes happen when you're dealing with new technology, and there are a ton of hacks in crypto, but Gavin Wood has one of the worst track records in the history of crypto when it comes to security and code. I don't know what goes on in that weird little mind of his, but I'm guessing that somewhere along the way he realized that he made a mess of Ethereum. Instead of sticking around to clean it up, he decided to start over on his own. And that's how Polkadot was born. It was actually Parity Technologies that initially developed the Polkadot blockchain, and many employees were brought over from Parity as well. The community for Polkadot is small and similar to what you see with a lot of underdog smart contract platforms. There isn't much to distinguish the Polkadot community from the rest, but they did set a major trend for the entire crypto industry. Believe it or not, Polkadot is where the term Web3 came from. Gavin Wood is actually credited with coining this term. Now, this is why you subscribe to this channel. You get these bits of info you just don't get on other channels because they weren't around when Gavin made it up. Web3 was obvious branding that was going to probably happen sooner or later, but he came up with it. Social media was branded as Web2 when the hype started heating up because it was seen as the second generation of the internet. Once we start getting actual decentralized applications, it will be obvious that crypto-enabled applications were the third generation of the internet. The Polkadot team had the foresight to come up with this branding years ago, though, and they deserve some credit for that. The branding is important, and it came at a time when it was desperately needed. Now, if you want an example of great branding and great execution, you should check out our channel sponsor, Stake. They've made themselves, through marketing, the world's largest social casino. Visit the link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen to get your account started with Stake. fun games, social chat, and more, Ben Armstrong Crypto X is powered by Stake. Much of the outrage thrown at the industry from outsiders are knee-jerk reactions that are based more on misinformation and envy than actual facts. Trust me, I experience it. For many of these people, there's no rational argument that will convince them to join the crypto revolution or advocate for blockchain technology because they've already made up their minds on these subjects. Or more importantly, they back themselves into a corner and don't want to appear foolish for changing their minds.
Get new information and pivot. Works for me.
Web3 offers these people a chance to capitulate, take advantage of the opportunities that this industry has to offer without ever needing to admit they're wrong in the first place. This has already started to happen to some extent, which is why mainstream commentary on Web3 is far more open-minded and curious than the commentary that these same sources have about crypto assets. The Web3 branding has taken a beating after the last bear market, and a lot of the rug pulls that we've seen in the NFT space, but the branding is still much stronger than blockchain or crypto. It still has much more mainstream appeal. Unfortunately for Polkadot, they were never really able to capitalize on their association with the term Web3, even though their operational organization is called the Web3 Foundation. This is a big missed opportunity and a major L on their part. They should have been able to leverage that to inject themselves into the conversation more, especially during the last cycle when Web3 was in all the headlines. So I got mixed feeling about giving this credit. They get it for being the first to use the term, but the fact that they failed to capitalize on it is not a great sign. Polkadot is powered by the Relay chain, and it's connected parachains. It's actually not two chains. Parachain. Which is a unique approach to scaling that isn't seen on other networks. The Relay chain is responsible for the network security, consensus, and cross-chain interoperability. It also makes it possible for parachains to communicate with each other. The Relay chain uses a nominated proof-of-stake consensus mechanism, or NPOS for short. NPOS is different from regular proof-of-stake because there are two different roles, validators and nominators. Validators, as the name implies, to validate transactions and create blocks, and nominators select and back validators with their own stake. You've been in crypto for a while, you know that's how it all works. The Relay chain is also where the governance happens. Decisions about network upgrades and other governance votes are done on the Relay chain. This includes parachain auctions, which I'll get to in a minute. But first, I want to tell you about our exclusive exchange sponsor, Phemex. Make sure to click the Phemex link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen. And don't forget to grab your Palau e-residency program card so you can KYC when it comes in the mail. It's how all the cool kids are trading now. Parachains are individual blockchains that run on the Polkadot network. This is similar to the Avalanche subnets or the Cosmos network. See, parachains, parallel chains. Parachains can be tailored for specific use cases, with some P-chains maximizing for DeFi and others maximizing for applications like gaming or social media. Parachains aren't entirely permissionless though. If a team wants to create a parachain, they need to get a slot on the Relay chain through what we called the parachain auctions, or that's what we always called them in the day, where projects need to put forward DOT in order to bid on the slot. The projects with the most DOT win the slots. In theory, these are going to be the projects that have the most support from the community. I can definitely see how VCs can tilt the scales here though. We waited for those parachain auctions forever. Clover Finance, Sakala, Moonbeam were among the first projects to win the auctions, and I'm guessing virtually none of you have heard of any of those. This shows you about how well those auction winners have done so far. And this is my second biggest issue with Polkadot. It all sounds great in theory, but it hasn't quite worked out as well as the team planned. Allowing the governance and consensus to happen all on the Relay level makes it easier to scale and provides more throughput for parachains. Parachains also benefit from the fact that they're being secured by the Relay chain, which takes away that load and responsibility so they can focus on their apps. Now, look, Polkadot's tech is very unique. That's something I really like. Too many projects are basically cookie cutters. They're the same blockchains with a few small tweaks to the code here and there, and I think it's good for the industry when these competing teams really push the limits of what's possible. But the problem with Polkadot's tech is that we haven't really been able to see it in action. Their ecosystem is pretty much non-existent. They're even further behind Cardano, and Cardano has been going slow on purpose. Think about that for a second. There's a little bit of activity though. Moonbeam is one of the most popular parachains on Polkadot when we mentioned one of the first auctions, which makes sense considering that this is one of the top EVM compatible chains, or Ethereum Virtual Machine compatible chains. So developers can easily port applications over from Ethereum, Polygon, BNB chain, Avalanche, or any other network that uses the EVM. Moonbeam has its own token called Glimmer with the ticker GLMR, and it's used for gas and staking on the Moonbeam parachain. This is an extension of the Moon River platform that was previously launched on the Kusama network. Kusama is another project. It's where many applications and features are being deployed before they can actually be fully operational on the Polkadot chain. It's a canary network, they call it. Tweet, tweet. Developers have called this a canary network instead of a testnet, because although many apps will eventually move onto the Polkadot chain, not all of them will make the cut. There are also some projects that will exist on both blockchains with slightly different names, which seems to be the case with Moonriver and Moonbeam. Kusama is also permissionless, which means that any developers can deploy applications to the network if they want to, unlike the main Polkadot parachains. We'll cover Kusama fully down the road when it's time. Moonbeam is the home of Centrifuge, which is probably the most functional and well-known application in the Polkadot ecosystem. Centrifuge is where bridging real-world assets, also known as RWA, onto the blockchain. And it's actually one of the most popular applications for this use case in the entire industry. As I explained in my explainer video for wrapped assets, RWA is going to be future crypto. This is how we're going to bring all the commodities and real estate in the world on-chain, and Centrifuge, well, it has a head start. So even though Polkadot's ecosystem is lagging behind a bit, it's still home to one of the most important projects in the space. I think there's a lot of potential here, but the ecosystem is clearly being held back by Gavin Wood. Now we get to my number one issue with the project. Not only does he have a history of putting crypto users in danger with his bad coding, but Gavin Wood's a pretty creepy dude. There was a controversy a few years ago where he was forced to apologize after a blog post surfaced where he basically fantasized about being a pedo in a very graphic and disturbing way. BuzzFeed published a story on it in 2016, and Gavin said it was fiction. Okay, cool. So you fantasize about touching children, but you don't do it. Whew, man, feel better now, Gavin. About to tell you something I've never said on this channel before out loud. But now it's been enough time that I feel like I can actually tell you what happened. Back in December of 2022, someone reached out to me anonymously and wanted to talk with me. Said they had some information. I didn't know what to expect. It was right when I got back from the Bahamas. Turned out, it was a transvestite. I was shown non-graphic photos of Gavin Wood clearly engaged in a physical relationship with another transvestite. Apparently, Gavin's got a thing for transvestites. Now look, I'm not going to judge these people. Not my cup of tea, but that's not the bad part. Along with several blockchain transactions and message screenshots I was shown, I was also asked if I wanted to see harder evidence, like photos. I said no, for multiple reasons, obviously. But what I heard next will haunt me for the rest of my life. If you don't want to hear it, turn it off now. Transvestite explained how Gavin often went to Asia to molest children, boys and girls. Then played me an audio clip of another transvestite explaining that Gavin Wood paid her 50 ETH in 2018 to go to Vietnam and help him find a young child to molest. And look, I can't even believe I'm going to say this, but he paid her 50 ETH, and I've seen the transaction with my own eyes and the message. Gavin Woods was seeking to find a child to molest and eat in Asia. It's the most disgusting thing I've ever heard. I told you guys that those crypto guys going to South Asia, you be careful around those guys. There's dangerous stuff going on over there. Transvestite told me that Gavin Wood worked hard to purge as much of this information off of the internet as they could. But supposedly, maybe people in the Polkadot community have seen this. There's a video somewhere, I can't find it, but they claim that it's out there, of two transvestites confronting Gavin Wood about this in a Polkadot conference. The solution here is obvious. If they want to survive, the Polkadot team and community need to get rid of Gavin Wood, force him out. It's not just his personality and some of his sketchy behavior that he's shown. It's also the fact that his sloppy code is responsible for so many hacks and so much money lost that he can't be trusted. In reality, he shouldn't have ever been trusted enough to launch Polkadot in the first place, but the idea is good. The implementation has not been great. I hope for the dot community, they can rise up and get rid of Gavin Wood and get things back on track with new leadership. At this point, I don't know if there's much of a choice, to be honest. Let me know down below in the comments what you believe about Polkadot. And don't forget, hit that like button on your way out. It helps us keep the lights on. Be blessed.